Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm B.
And I'm Zach.
And this week, we read Chapter 5 of The Last Olympian, I Drive My Dog into a Tree.
Unfortunately, Miss O'Leary doesn't have four-wheel drive, so that might be a bummer.
Four-paw walk.
Oh, four-paw walk? How many horsepower is that?
I mean, she's probably a lot of horsepower. She's pretty big. She is a hellhound, so...
One of my favorite pieces of fan art is Miss O'Leary as a Chow Chow.
Yes, that's very good.
And it just goes bork.
Yeah, this is kind of... I mean, the beginning definitely goes in a similar way to what I expected. Like, kind of sad because of what happened to Beckendorf.
Yeah, because it comes off like that weird type of melodrama, like in the last chapter where everyone's mad at everybody but Percy Jackson. It's almost like a return to like normalcy. We get to see more like demigod type of action rather than the teen romance. This is something that I enjoy a lot more in Percy Jackson is Percy has like a problem or he's trying to figure out a solution and it doesn't involve teen romance in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, there's still some stuff about, like, obviously, like, loss of innocence, loss of life stuff that's we've been dealing with the past few chapters. They do mention Beckendorf and how it's kind of sad that, like, yes, technically Mrs. O'Leary was, like Percy's dog, but, like, she was left with Beckendorf when he wasn't around, and so it's kind of like, yeah.
He was old Becky's hellhound as well.
I really like Mrs. O'Leary as, like, I don't know, would you call her a character? She doesn't speak, but, like, I don't know. I like that there's, like, this sort of, like, kind of seemingly threatening animal, but it's actually, like, really friendly to Percy. It's kind of a cute, I don't know. It's sweet.
I think when it comes to it, I think in the visual sense, Miss O'Leary would be more of a character. It's the same as how, like, you have Blackjack, and you have a lot of characters that you can have, like, almost like inanimate objects or, like, animals. Like, for me, when it comes
Blackjack
to anything...
talks. So that's kind of more of a character, but yeah, it's...
What I'm trying to say is, like, in the literary sense, you kind of could possibly forget that Miss O'Leary is there unless you are a dog person or you really like this. I mean, a good example of this is, like, I think Miss O'Leary in, like, the visual sense, if they ever do, like, a live-action series, would obviously... You'd be able to have much more of a bigger impact with her if you saw, like, in the visual sense. It's a lot like Baby Yoda.
Well, I mean, everybody loves dogs, so yeah. I mean, I think that it's like a certain level of pathos where it's like, oh, like, it's so sad that Beckendorf died because he left the dog behind. Like, that's definitely... They're really just trying to drive home how sad, like, the loss of Beckendorf is. It really, like, contrasts with some of the other deaths that have happened in this series, especially, like, God, I can't remember his name. The kid of,
Lee Fletcher?
Of Dionysus, who died. Yeah, Lee Fletcher, who died. Like, we don't even remember much about him, but then, like, Beckendorf, like, it seems like every chapter there's, like, a new detail that they talk about how it, like, affected the camp in some way, like, oh, it affected Selena, it affected Percy in this way, like, all of it's like, sort of ripples outward to affect everyone in the camp, because he was such, like, a specific mainstay.
Yes, and I think if they ever do a live-action adaptation, what they need to probably focus on a little bit is kind of fleshing out those particular characters that are going to die, in that sense of, like, you actually see them more. They have either more speaking roles, so when they actually die, you have some type of, like, emotional response, because we just sat there like, well, we don't really know them, but it's sad because everyone knows them.
We kind of know Beckendorf, so I think it was more emotionally impactful. I don't think Lee Fletcher was necessarily.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like, when it comes to Beckendorf, he's been there since, like, day one. And when it comes to, like, Miss O'Leary, I like dogs, so I always think about Miss O'Leary in the way they describe her. You know, she's as big as a garbage truck. Percy Jackson plays Frisbee with her with, like, a gigantic shield, and she's the goodest girl to ever grace the camp.
I like the sort of trope of, like, an animal that's, like, kind of big and threatening seeming, but it's actually, like, very sweet. You know what I mean? Like, any kind of, like, those 80s dog movies of just, like, a giant dog that, like, actually is very sweet.
Well, no, I always think about the Horse Girl movie. You always have, like, the black horse.
Of course you do.
And it's like, oh, it's unruly, it's unstable, and the girl falls in love with the horse, and she's the only one that's able to ride him because the horse will let her ride her. And pretty much, you know, they'll win the big race, but then there's some BS moment of why they can't race in the big final, but they say screw it anyways. I think I'm describing, like, every Horse Girl movie.
Horse Girl movie.
Yeah.
Or actually, that's kind of a little bit like Black Beauty too, but it's a horse boy movie. Same idea, though.
Well, horse boy movies are just race car movies.
It's the same thing. They're just using animals to make your heart break, basically, which is kind of what the beginning of this chapter is.
Well, I like the beginning of this chapter because Percy goes to, like, the range, and he realizes very quickly this is where Grover had been, quote-unquote, exiled, and how the grass is dying, things aren't as it seems because there's like the split within the Cloven Elders, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's sort of like a two-prong reason why he goes over to see Miss O'Leary. One is to like have us think about more of like an impact that the death of Beckendorf has had on the camp, and then secondly, it's like the excuse for him to be over there, so that way he encounters all this stuff with the Council of Cloven Elders, and with Nico showing up again, and with Juniper talking about Grover again. Like all of that wouldn't have really made sense unless Percy had to be like over in that direction of camp.
Well, no, it would have been awkward if like, and Percy Jackson walked over there, and everyone was here.
Yeah, like why is he over there exactly? Or like if all of a sudden Juniper like appeared at his cabin or what? Like it wouldn't have really made sense. So to contextualize it, they had to kind of be like, he's over this way.
No, B, if we're going in the tropes of Percy Jackson, Percy would have had a terrible dream and would have been woken up by Juniper.
Oh yeah,
And then they would have had their conversation.
she would have been crying or something.
Yeah,
It's like,
she
why
would have
are
been
you here?
crying. Because I miss Grover, and you're like close to him. You have that empathy link.
Because you're the main character and exposition follows you,
Yes.
obviously.
It's in the script right here. Wait, what?
Oh man, this is getting too meta. This is starting to be like a Charlie Kaufman movie or something.
Yeah, and what I enjoy about this chapter a lot of is, you know, you have like the loss of innocence, especially once you get to Nico and Juniper, and you have like the sense of like people don't know where Grover is.
Things are not going well for basically everybody in this chapter. This is kind of a theme. We haven't really had much good news at all since the beginning of this book. Like every chapter is another like negative update about a character. Like, yeah, they're doing pretty bad and they're doing pretty bad. Like there's just like no optimism in sight.
Are you waiting for the part where Percy Jackson gets a letter from his mom? Paul has left me.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just like it's a gut punch after gut punch. Like it truly is like, oh yeah, we haven't thought about this character. Why? How they do it? They're literally like, I wonder how this like adorable big dog is doing. The dog is
Miserable.
also sad. Like literally, like no one's happy.
No, but you see like Blackjack off in the corner. He's like, I really wish I was at the glue factory right now. I'm so sad. Like, oh my God. Blackjack, are you okay? But yeah, so you see the situation occur, which is that Juniper's talking to this big old thick boy, Cloven Elder.
Linnaeus,
And she's
yeah.
really Linnaeus, and she's really upset. And guess who else is there?
I hate all the Cloven Elders. They're the freaking worst. And Nico's there, of course, because
And
he's
Nico's
just like,
also there,
he
yeah.
always seems to be in like important, conspicuous moments. Like he just kind of appears. He's like, didn't mean to be here, but I just happened to pop up.
Well, no, that's because the plot needed him to be there.
Yeah, he always seems to be like at different important moments. Even like later on in the chapter, he says like, "Oh, I didn't mean to see what was going on with the other side of the war, but I just happened to be there." Like he's always just like in the right place at the right time or I guess, you know, in some ways the wrong place.
Well, he also has the spooky ability to teleport through shadow itself.
That's true too. We learn about that, so that probably adds to like the weird like plot point of him always like appearing, you know, like even we think back to like the end of the last book, how he just like appears outside of Percy's window or whatever. So
I'm sure this ability works a lot like the TARDIS, and how is the Doctor really traveling, or is the TARDIS taking him to places where people need his help?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that Nico has like sentience and control over where he's going, but he has like this weird like chaotic sprightly energy, and I think that comes from the fact that he's like the son of Hades, where he just has like this chaos to him, and he just shows up at like weird moments.
So it's kind of like Quantum Leap with Scott Bakula.
Yeah, it's exactly like Quantum Leap with Scott Bakula. Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking more like the kid from Hey Arnold, who always appears behind Helga
Yes, that creepy kid.
when she's like doing her monologue at the locket.
Oh, football head. When it comes to like the argument between Linnaeus and Juniper, it's really dumb because this is where I think we have had this argument before, the talking kind, but we're not going to like brush into it. It's kind of like the separation of like religions when you have one sect break off and form a new religion. This is pretty much exactly how it feels.
That's kind of what's happening. Yeah, they have like an ideological disagreement, and I do think that like the Council of Cloven Elders specifically are sort of supposed to represent
The old way?
like tradition. Yeah, like tradition being resistant to change, or like trying to change things for the better because they've always done things a certain way, and that's kind of like what they represent. So even when presented with like facts or evidence that what they're doing maybe isn't the best, they're like, no, we do what we do, you're a heretic or whatever. And that's kind of, this is the same tune that they sang, you know, last time we encountered them, and they basically tried to like excommunicate Grover.
Yes, the la 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 la, I'm not listening.
Yeah, basically. I have expected Percy to say, okay, boomer.
This is 10 years too early for this.
I know, but it has very okay boomer energy, this whole conversation that's happening.
Percy hasn't done the 10-year challenge yet.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I feel like I liked this conversation because Percy has already kind of defended Grover, but he gets like another chance to be like, no, Grover did the right thing and I was there and I'll vouch for him. And I don't know, it really shows that he's a good friend. He's willing to like stick his neck out, even though that this guy technically is like a very important figure in mythology.
He's a big jerk.
Well, yeah, Linnaeus is also a jerk, but like, what does Juniper say again? She says,
he's like in charge of all the satyrs.
yeah, he's like king of the wild or something, and that's like not a good enemy to make. And he's like, well, I've had worse enemies than this like overweight satyr or whatever. He doesn't even care.
Yeah, look at Annabeth. She has an enemy in Hera. Oh man, is that bad. So Percy Jackson doesn't give a heck about anything that he does? Because he already has an enemy in Ares. There's nothing worse. Maybe like a negative plus positive.
No, he has an enemy in like every god, practically. So like, is he going to care about just like another jerk satyr saying mean things about his friend that aren't true? Like, I don't know. Linnaeus is really frustrating, but also I just feel like this is a bit of a rehash of like the whole Council of Cloven Elders like hearing that we had in the last book where they try to decide whether Grover was lying.
Well, we can talk about this a little bit because I like that Rick Riordan doesn't kind of like gloss over the fact that there's always going to be some type of history or weight. Things don't mysteriously just change. Like, you're not going to have Linnaeus like, you know what? After this last summer, I've been doing a lot of thinking.
And I changed my mind.
Thinking about myself. I really converted to Groveranity or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Groverism? I don't know. Yeah, Groverstantism? No, that's not.
I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Yeah, that works. I mean, that actually does work because doesn't he wear like that big hat
he
to
wears
like
the Rasta
cover
cap?
his horns? Anyway, yeah, he's like, there's still, you know, like a stick in the mud, like not going to believe what Percy's saying, which is frustrating because there's no reason why Percy would lie. I mean, I guess because he would want his friend to not be excommunicated, but.
B, here's the thing though. They don't have proof. They literally don't have proof. They're all using eyewitness testimony.
That's true. We believe it only because we see the perspective of that. Yeah, like we were technically quote unquote there when all this happened, so we're just like taking them at their word. But I could kind of see not believing that the god died in that way, but like why would they make that up? It doesn't really make sense.
Well, B, I'm a gigantic cow talking in a microphone. Can you prove it?
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's sort of like trying to prove a negative and stuff. So it's like, how do you prove that a god died when like this whole time it's been missing? So like, what's the difference between Pan being missing and Pan being dead? Like, it's the same thing.
Well, no, you can't prove it unless Grover brought Pan before he dissolved right into the Cloven Elders. Otherwise, it's like interjection.
Yeah. This is like definitely one of those things where you wish that like smartphones were a thing and they just like caught it on video and like did a Facebook Live of Pan dying. Like, here's the god of the wild dying right before our eyes.
B, you're telling me you have to like check the little eyeball icon now to see if this is safe for work?
Yeah, basically.
I want to watch a god die.
Yeah, I don't know if that's safe for work. I think that's pretty depressing.
Though I feel like it'd be like Raiders of the Lost Ark when like the spooky ghosts come out of the Ark of the Covenant.
I mean, when Pan dies, it definitely has like the same energy of like the Wizard of Oz when each person is sort of like gifted something. It's like, and you're good at this, and you're good at this, and I believe in you, Grover, to carry my message. Well, Pan, sorry to disappoint you, but nobody believes Grover, so.
Well, it reminds me a lot of Princess Mononoke in the sense of like nature, like you see a big, beautiful creature die and you're supposed to feel sad for it. In the sense of like it's majestic freedom.
Yeah, no, it's definitely that same lesson of like the world is being taken over by like heartless humans who haven't like respected nature the way that they should have. Like it's the typical kind of like ecological lesson that a lot of kids media has.
It's like that scene in Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End where they see the Kraken lying on the beach dead and they're all like it was the last of its kind. Yeah, they make like a sentiment. They made like a sentimental scene where it's like, this was the last of the Krakens. Jack is the last of the pirates. Like they have like that weird type of philosophical debate about one majestic creature might equal another one. It's a lot like that. Like, I'm comparing the Kraken to Pan. So, yes.
It's kind of similar, too, because it's like an old creature, kind of like mythological thing that people believed in, and then it just stops existing. That's kind of heartbreaking. That's actually similar to the Sometime Never, a Fable for Supermen, also known as the Roald Dahl book that no one has read except for me and like my advisor. But it's a similar sort of thing of like mythological creatures dying because humans like destroy the earth. Humans are bad, you guys. That's kind of the lesson of a lot of these kinds of books.
I think humans are kind of cool sometimes. We have some fun hats.
Mm-hmm.
We like break dance. Have you ever had ice cream? That stuff's amazing.
Yeah, we get rid of the rainforest and the ice caps. And an old god that lasted forever until humans were like, I'm going to develop this into a resort.
I can see why we're complete polar opposites on our personalities.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, optimism. I'm just like, Pan is dead.
In our hearts, he still lives on, V. But pretty much Lyris does like the weird like smoke bomb thing, like he disappears. Because he just wants to get out of there.
Well, luckily, I did like the sort of framing device of like, we introduced this chapter with Mrs. O'Leary and she scares the crap out of Linnaeus because he like doesn't like hellhounds being around him. He's like, whose beast is this? Why is this existing in my nature? I don't want to see it. And he's like really freaked out.
Get him out of my neighborhood.
Yeah, that was pretty great. I also found it kind of revealing that like Linnaeus has sort of a connection to like nature and other animals, but there's a distinction between like underworld animals and like quote unquote nature animals.
Yeah, I like that there's a distinction between that. What I also like is that they kind of go into the empathy link because Linnaeus is like, oh yes.
Oh right, yeah, they
Grover's
mentioned
dead.
that. Yeah.
And he's like, even Linnaeus is like, well, the empathy link isn't really that reliable. Like, you know what? He has a point there. It hasn't been quite reliable at all. It's like the dollar store of like Bluetooth devices.
Yeah, Linnaeus is very frustrating. He kind of just poofs away because Mrs.
Well,
O'Leary
he's there to
is
cause
luckily
conflict.
Yeah, well, also he's there to kind of have the excuse of talking to Juniper again and reassuring her about Grover. And it was helpful to learn a little bit more about the empathy link and be like, okay, apparently, according to Linnaeus, which remember, he doesn't seem that trustworthy because he doesn't believe any of this stuff. Huh? Dr. Sayers. Linnaeus doesn't seem that trustworthy because he doesn't believe any of the stuff about Pan, but he does say that empathy links, quote unquote, aren't like reliable, I guess. I don't know how true that is. If that's like an actual part of the lore of empathy links that like you're not 100% sure if someone's dead or not, or if like that's just him being a contrarian jerk.
The problem though is that the whole plot point of like Sea of Monsters is if Grover dies, Percy's gonna become a vegetable for the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's like if they're not like reliable, then maybe Grover dies and Percy's fine. You know what I mean? So I feel like the stakes would have been higher.
Maybe he might just get some like indigestion or something. He might be like, oh man, my tummy hurts. I need to take some Tums.
Yeah, right. Like Grover dies and Percy just feels a little bit nauseous for like a day. And he's like, I wonder what that was. And I must have eaten something weird at the big house. And then it just like the whole time it was Grover like suffering a horrible death. I don't think it's that. It's obviously that the empathy link is real because otherwise it completely removes any of like the dramatic tension innate with the fact that they're like connected. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, what was the point of Sea of Monsters and the whole stressful thing about like the Cyclops and whether or not Grover was going to die? Like that would have ruined everything. I don't know.
In that instance, it's a plot device because they need to get Percy Jackson proactive, whereas we haven't really used it. I think the last time they kind of used it was in the Titan's Curse when he's at the dance and he's trying to communicate with Grover in the sense of like, I got the demigods.
Don't they use it in the labyrinth too for a little bit because he thinks they don't know where he is at first because he's off with Tyson and he's like, oh, I think he's still alive, but like they don't really use it to like connect and make sure because like in Sea of Monsters we talked about this. It's weird how the empathy link seems to be so important where like it's almost every night Percy's having visions of what is happening with Grover and it seems very strong. And then now he tends to just have the normal visions again of like other things happening in the world, whether it has to do with Kronos or Luke or what's going on. Sometimes he'll like have a vision about Rachel Elizabeth Dare. There's all sorts of different visions he's having, but it's not necessarily like, oh, where Grover is. Like he actually hasn't had one of those in a while. I don't know if that means the empathy link is weaker or it just like isn't plot important anymore. So all of a sudden it's not mentioned as much. It's kind of confusing, like the significance of it, because it seems very important in Sea of Monsters and not so much here.
I see what you're saying there, B. I feel like if Percy Jackson went to the camp, is like, I need to find the best tracker that we have. Carmen, where are you? Oh, we need to find Grover. because Carmen Sandiego is now a demigod.
Yeah, it's also kind of weird because Grover is a tracker, so like, who's supposed to find someone who's lost when the best searcher is him?
I like that his last whereabouts is that Grover was in Canada. And that seems so fascinating to me because we're so used to the idea of Percy Jackson taking place in America. Though, if we cut to like Grover, he'd probably be eating like cups from Tim Hortons.
He probably would.
And he'd be like, poutine, I love it. Yeah. He's like eating like hockey pucks.
Yeah, that's definitely, he'd be like, delicious, like a bonbon. Yeah,
Exactly.
There's so many hilarious inanimate objects that Grover would find delicious in Canada. He eats a moose whole. No, he wouldn't do that. That's a little dark.
Well, no, if it was a plastic moose, then yes.
Maybe some sort of like souvenir at like a gift shop at Niagara Falls or something.
Well, no, it'd be the big battle sequence at the end was he'd like ride out on a moose wearing like a Canadian Mountie uniform.
I hope that that's what happens. That's how the book ends, is like the great big battle happens. They still know where Grover is. And he just like appears on like the back of a moose with a Mountie hat on and like holding a Canadian flag.
Well, he's holding a Canadian flag and he has like shurikens, but they're like maple leaves.
Yeah. He has like a lollipop in the shape of a maple leaf.
Oh man, this is great. This is some great.
I want this fan art. That sounds pretty great. Is Canadian Grover. He seems like he would fit in Canada. You know, he has that sort of like good-natured sweetness that Canadians are stereotyped as having.
Grover comes back to camp. Oh, hey, Percy. So I went to get some Tim Hortons, and what about that?
What about that? I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still confused about the empathy link. I don't exactly understand how the significance of it changes or how important it is or if even it would matter if Grover died. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it means.
As of right now, it doesn't seem that important. And that's something that, again, can be a little frustrating because we've had it in multiple books.
Yeah, it makes it retroactively not seem that important. Do you know what I mean? Like, you think about Sea of Monsters. I don't know if I could reread that book and then be like in the moment caught up in the importance of whether or not Grover's going to die. Obviously, it would be sad if Grover died, but there's like a different level of stakes when they're connected in this way that supposedly one dies and the other one does. And then to like call that into question totally like changes how I see that story because so much of the dramatic tension has to do with that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like when it comes to it, the dramatic tension, it's very important in Percy Jackson because it's what gets kids to keep flipping the pages of the book. Whereas here, it can be a little, I guess, frustrating, though we get like snippets and how we need to have help. We need to figure out how to find Grover because he's very smart. He's Percy's friend, but most importantly, he's like gathering a bunch of like nature spirits as well as other satyrs to help them. And he's kind of become, what's the best, like almost like a prophet, I guess, or he's like the Pied Piper of trying to like wrangle up all these people.
Yeah, he's sort of trying to inspire people to help nature in their own small way. That's kind of like the lesson of the conversation they have with Pan, I guess, is that it's sort of like a very Smokey Bear lesson in a way where it's like only you can prevent forest fires. Like it's the individual choice of people that like, it can't just be depending on these magical beings or this like this deity of nature to come and save you. You have to like all help together, which I mean, I feel like that's also a very early 2000s idea of environmentalism too. Like, oh, your individual choices are going to be enough to like save the planet, which, is kind of not very true necessarily.
Well, no, see, Grover like sees someone like, hey, you got to recycle and puts up his fist and he has a tattoo that says re and the other one that says cycle.
Yeah, recycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure recycle. He has a very big Captain Planet energy where he'd be like, oh, you have to like make these individual choices to be a good, I don't know, citizen of the planet to make nature, grow to its former glory. But, then you learn about someone like Rachel Elizabeth Dare's dad, who's like this evil, like, I don't know, development businessman who just is like, I don't know, like bulldozing wilderness and putting up skyscrapers, like full on like 80s movie villain or something. And I definitely think that that's kind of maybe what Grover should be focusing on more is like the people who are, causing the widespread pollution and ruining nature as opposed to like that one guy who didn't recycle or something.
The heart, Harry. You gotta go for the heart.
I'm just imagining like Grover just like straight up just murdering a businessman being like, stop. You've destroyed the rainforest. It's all your fault.
Stop, you've destroyed the rainforest. You have to pay with your life. For some reason, now Grover is like sitting on like a desk and he has
He's like a vigilante.
the guy's butt like mounted on like a fireplace. Like he's like stuffed and mounted the person.
I'd read that sequel, or I guess it wouldn't quite be a sequel. It'd be sort of a midquel.
Oh, he's got a dare shaped rug.
As opposed to a bearskin rug, it's a dareskin rug.
Yeah.
Oh,
Man, this
God.
sounds like a horror movie.
It does.
We
It's
should move on.
getting really dark and weird, but like I don't know. It's a very specific brand of environmentalism that definitely Grover
It's
is
kind of
representing.
going out of vogue.
Yeah, no, that's like not really that kind of that ethos of being like, and if you go to your local park and pick up some garbage, then we can save the rainforest. Like that very specific kind of like naivete is like, I think that it makes sense that Grover represents that too, because he always had that sort of naive personality.
You also have to remember when these books are written, and this was at a very particular point in time, and I'm sure when Rick Riordan was a teacher and was like really like outlining these books, I'm sure that's all what his kids watched was like Captain Planet or like those environmental shows.
That's what we learned. We watched, you know what I mean? Like what's that movie? Fern Gully and like all those kinds
Fern
of
Gully.
things that, you know, we watched as kids, or even like to lesser extent, like something like Pocahontas that's very like, you know, you just need to learn how to live at one with nature. And I don't know, it's a little bit naive.
As it's saying about like the rainbows and the river bends and how John Smith is low-key and
No, John Smith is the jerk of history. I mean, like, he represents, like, colonialism and, like, he's bad. He's real bad. Historically and in the movie.
you know, he's also voiced by Mel Gibson too. So
Who's bad in real life, too. So.
and his boyfriend is voiced by Christian Bale.
Yeah, no, all of it's bad.
Oh man. But moving on a little bit, so even Juniper kind of leaves, and it's Percy and Nico because Nico's been there.
Nico's just there.
He's at the wrong place at the wrong time. And like, oh, hey, Nico, what are you doing here in your fun ways? And he's like, Percy, I've come to talk to you.
We're running out of time.
I got some MCR tickets. They're having a reunion tour. You want to come with me? No, he doesn't talk about that.
Wait, I'm from the future. They're having a reunion tour. Meanwhile, Percy's like, wait, they broke up.
Yeah. Oh, it's like one of my favorites is the time traveler memes. Like, hey, what year is it? Oh, it's 1914. Oh, World War One hasn't happened yet. Wait, World War One? What about World War Two?
Yeah.
But what I like about this is that this is the first time we get answers, but then again, nothing gets answered at the exact same time.
No, we don't exactly know what Nico's plan is yet, but we do.
Well, we have some idea of it now.
Wait, so is Nico's plan the thing about going to see like Luke's mom, or is that just a part of it?
That's one part of it, because he talks about something else. I guess the best way to break this down is that right now the plan is to like visit Luke's past, and you know what, B? I hate to do this to you. I'm sorry, everybody.
Oh, jeez.
It's like Half-Blood Prince.
Here we go. Ding, ding. Harry Potter again.
Am I crazy?
Oh, you mean like just sort of like trying to find the past of Tom Riddle? It's like the
Yes.
same idea.
It's the exact
yeah, I see
same
what you
type
mean. It's
of
like,
thing.
oh, here's like this serial killer child. Let's figure out how he became this way.
Yeah, but it's literally the exact same thing. To understand Voldemort, you have to understand his past.
It's kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, that's always kind of interesting to try and like delve into like what made a villain before they were like, you know, what you see now. But I mean, sometimes that doesn't work out. Like, for instance, the Star Wars prequels.
Well, no, because it's really dumb and lame, and I'm sorry, everybody, but I don't need to explain why the Star Wars prequels are really bad.
I have the high ground.
No, don't do it, Anakin. I have the high ground. The council betrayed you. No, Anakin, don't do it. I hate you. I hate you.
Speaking of the Star Wars prequels, do you want to know the name of Sarah's OC that she had in middle school? Was it middle school?
Middle school. I was like 12.
Well, I like that. I guess Sarah's here now, too.
Sarah's here. So Sarah's going to tell us, just come on the mic and tell us what the name of your OC was.
Just say it or
Just-
give any context.
Just say it. Just say the name.
Kananya Nanduras.
Now, what was she?
She was a Jedi Padawan, although she had like a vengeance complex, which was kind of Sith leaning.
Okay, so wait. Now tell us why you named her Kananya Honduras.
Well, I made her up while I was in Spanish class, and there were a bunch of posters of various Spanish-speaking nations, and Spanish words and the kind of things you would see on the wall in a Spanish classroom. And so one of them said, visit Honduras. And one of them said something, including the word mañana, which means tomorrow. And I was like, oh, if I change like
One
letter, that's a sick space name. And so Cananian Honduras was born.
Mañana Honduras, basically.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. So you did George Lucas. So that's exactly what he did.
It's not to roast George Lucas, although I will, but that's not that much like less creative than every name he ever made up. So I stand by it.
Oh, jeez.
Chewbacca and Lumbaka. Lumbaka means dog.
No, it's the same. I won't blame you. You were a child.
I was
did
also
better.
12, and I did as well as he did as a grown man.
Okay, thank you for coming.
All
on our
right,
show.
Thank you
anyway,
so
bye,
much.
listeners.
Make sure that never support greyhounds and everyone have a good day. But
No, you can don't support Greyhound buses, but do support Greyhound dogs.
okay. But
That should be a t-shirt.
hey, B.
Hey, Zach.
So I lost all of our passwords. My mom washed them in my jeans
Why were they in your jeans?
because that's where you're supposed to keep all your passwords, right?
On a piece of paper in your jeans?
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably the worst place to keep your passwords.
What is a good way to keep my passwords then?
Dashlane Premium combines unlimited password storage synced across all your devices with dark web monitoring and a VPN for Wi-Fi protection. It's the easy solution for autofilling passwords and personal information combined with advanced tools you'll never want to browse without. For 20% off Dashlane Premium, go to dashlane.com/camphalfblood and enter code CAMPHalfBlood.
Wow, because of that, I don't have to wear super big pockets anymore. I'm going to wear some short shorts. Thanks, B. Okay, going back on track because I feel like I just had a stroke right now.
Oh my god. Well, you were just like, you have to put Sarah on. I was like, here
I
she
do have to
She's
put
like, I was
Sarah.
going to the bathroom and I heard you mention Star Wars and I knew.
Yes. So I do like that they have like the deconstruction of a villain because sometimes hearing about their past makes things and they put things into more perspective. The Percy Jackson needs to go to Quantico and get the Mindhunter people and they'll be able to have like this whole deconstruction.
900. Oh, to like figure out his like the psychology of the serial killer kind of thing. Yeah, I could see that. It's pretty obvious why Luke acts the way he acts. It's like kind of the same reason that like every
B, why do you think he acts the way he does? I'm actually curious now.
because he's entitled. I don't know. And he has like trauma from his like dad and also other places, but like I feel like he has a very similar psychology to like a lot of like entitled creepy guys who like post manifestos to like Reddit about like weird misogynist ideas that they have. Like it's the same kind of thing. He has like that energy of like someone who feels like he's owed a certain life that he doesn't have, so he's just gonna like take it out on everyone. It's like the same as a lot of villains. I think he feels powerless, so he like the only way for him to feel powerful is to like be cruel to people.
That is an interesting breakdown. And I feel like we're going to meet his mom, so maybe she might be the exact same type of way as Luke, or worse.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe she's really nice and he like didn't like appreciate her or something. I don't know. I have a lot of possible theories as to the way his mom could be, because it could just like not have anything to do with her. Yeah.
We'll talk about that at the end. I feel like we'll talk about this in predictions.
Yeah, okay.
But one other part of the plan is that whatever they're going to do, they can't undo it, but also Percy Jackson would become invincible.
Yeah, I have no idea what this means. I know that we keep hinting at what Nico's plan is, but I don't know what this means at all.
Oh my god, this is like hard to keep.
I'm
but
like so confused. Like am I like missing something? I'm trying to think like, how would he become invincible? Like, is there something that we talked about that like makes someone, I mean like
yes.
I don't,
I won't tell you, B.
am I like misremember? I don't know. Because I know that obviously like the Hunters of Artemis, like they can't die unless they die in battle. There's been like some discussions of different forms of like immortality and that kind of thing. But I can't quite.
But there's more things. There's more things you're missing in like mythology. And I'm not going to be like, oh, you don't know better. It's something that I guess I should preface this is that I think I knew about it because of a certain movie at the time. So when I was reading this book, it made more sense.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of mythological things about like living forever or like being impervious to things. So I'm not entirely sure. I don't like, did they specifically reference this already in Percy Jackson, or is this just more of like a general cultural thing?
It's a general cultural thing, I believe.
Because I'm just like, oh, it wouldn't be It wouldn't be like the Fountain of Youth or something, because that doesn't sound like the
yes,
same.
turn
Because
Luke
that's like
into a baby.
Arthurian. Yeah, that's like Arthurian legend, which isn't quite the same thing. Like, I don't know. I can't.
Well, I guess we'll find out. All we know is that whatever it's going to be is that Percy Jackson will quote unquote be invincible, but there's no turning back once you do it.
I can't say what that is. Maybe I'm like so dumb that I'm just like missing something obvious, but I just like, I don't, nothing's springing to mind as like an obvious thing that would make him that way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a real Gordian knot situation.
I bet people are screaming at their devices. I'm sorry. Like, I truly sometimes things just don't jump out to me. And then like more minor things seem obvious, so I don't know. I don't know how my brain works.
We'll eventually find out, but I do like I compare it to like Harry Potter in the sense of like, okay, this is the exact same type of thing, but this happens in a lot of stories where you have like the deconstruction of a villain, and I like that you're kind of exploring a character's past in this way. Like you're having Percy Jackson look at it as you already know how super evil that person is, but before that, who were they? Because even really terrible people kind of have humble beginnings, I guess.
It's always interesting to find out the demigod backgrounds, like about their mortal parents, because we always like talk a lot about their godly parents, and then, you know, finding out, for instance, about like Annabeth's dad, or finding out more about like Percy's mom and how she is outside of all of this demigod stuff, you know?
Well,
like,
that also contributes to their personalities.
well, yeah, because half the time they're usually there. Most of the demigods are raised by their mortal parents for at least some of the time.
Yeah, and when it comes to it, I find it so fascinating when you have, like, if you look at Annabeth, I love Annabeth. It's interesting to see her personality, where you understand where she gets to, like, her, not her obsessive behaviors, but you see, like, her dad, like, he's this very scholarly figure, but also you have to remember gods pick people that they find interesting, that they kind of have, like, almost like a type.
Yeah, I do find it interesting to meet the other half of like a parent duo that produced a demigod, because then you also get into like the psychology of the god that picked them. Like, what about Sally Jackson does Poseidon like? You know what I mean? What about Luke's mom that drew Hermes to her? You know what I mean? There must be something about her personality that like meshes with Hermes somehow.
And it makes sense because you have a character like Thalia who's very overly dramatic at times, but then you forget that her mom was an actor. So it makes sense why she's overly dramatic.
Exactly. Yeah, you like it explains other halves of her personality. Though to be honest, Zeus is not dramatic. Can we just be
Oh no, that guy
honest?
is beyond dramatic. Even in the
Yeah,
first book.
they're both dramatic. That's probably why Zeus was drawn to the mom in the beginning,
Well,
you know?
the funny thing about Zeus is that he's overly dramatic, and we actually had a line in the first book where Poseidon's like, yeah, he should have been the god of theater, not the god of lightning.
Yeah.
Because I love that about Zeus in the way of like, he's just so over the top.
petty.
He's great. No, there's something great about him in that sense of like him being petty can make for interesting things. And B, I think I just got hit in the face with lightning, so I might have a heart attack. So see ya.
Yeah, your heart just stopped. No, I mean, like, isn't that's like a lot of mythology, is Zeus just being kind of a jerk. Like a dramatic jerk.
And I'm interested to see what happens with this because they're going to be exploring Luke's past, and they have to get to Luke's mom, May Castelli.
May Castell, yeah. Yeah, she lives in Connecticut,
Which isn't that
which
bad.
kind of doesn't surprise me.
Why doesn't it not surprise you?
Because Westport, Connecticut is where like a lot of like waspy people live. Like a lot of like rich, entitled waspy people live in Westport, Connecticut. So like Luke being from there completely makes sense to me, because I always pictured him as kind of like the kind of dude who wears like salmon pants with like the print of like a crab on it, and like a polo shirt with a popped collar, and like Sperry boat shoes.
When it comes to this chapter, it is an interesting conversation. I mean, they kind of beat around the bush about just explaining the plan because once again, they are alone. There's no one to hear them talk about the plan. They could just straight up talk about it.
Yeah, and they could just outright say it, but it's just plot-wise. They have to be cagey, which is kind of frustrating. That's very Rick Riordan to be like, well, we could be like really obvious and talk about this plan that we've hinted at for like several books now. Because like they hinted at the end of the last book, and also in
the short
the short
story.
story, still didn't explain it. And then again, for a couple chapters now in this book, and still we don't really know what it is.
Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing that Rick Riordan's like withholding this information? Because for me, I don't see it as a bad thing because as the reader, once the plan actually takes place, I think it might make sense more. But also, I think is it something kind of like in the plans of like if they say it and there's someone listening, things could go bad?
Right. I get that because then, there's also a spy in the camp, so I understand being kind of cagey about what is happening, but I definitely think that there's a plot reason that it makes sense that they would be like kind of weird about actually saying what the plan is. And also there's a very specific like Rick Riordan reason of being like, I'm not ready to tell you what it is yet. So it's kind of both.
And I don't see that as a bad thing at times. I feel like we are getting more information. The only time I get really annoyed at it is when it's like, hey, did you think about the plan? And then they keep saying that within multiple chapters and there's no like addition to kind of like what they're talking about.
Yeah, just the plan. They know what the plan. It's like so unspeakable in some ways. Yeah, because it seems so like risky or something. There's something about it that because Percy's been hemming and hawing over this plan forever, and he seems kind of torn about it emotionally, like, oh, it might be a good plan, but it's a big risk. And so that there's stakes involved, but you don't know what. And then obviously Nico suggesting it, and he kind of he's not an enemy or anything. Like he's, for all we know on Percy's side, I mean, I don't think that he's the spy necessarily, but it wouldn't make sense if he was the spy. But he's been cagey with Percy
so he's
in the
a
past.
double, triple agent?
Yeah, I mean, like he was kind of a jerk to him that, in between the time when Bianca died. But they seem to be friends again, or at least, civil. I don't know. He's just weird.
They're frenemies.
Yeah, I don't know, because any plan that he would suggest would probably involve something pretty intense because he was about to, like kill Daedalus to like summon his sister back from the dead, like that kind of stuff. So he's a lot of like morally gray kind of stuff. Yeah.
So it's going to be something in that term, right? It's going to be like an eye for an eye.
Oh, wait. Okay, hold on a second.
Oh, no.
Okay, so you said we haven't mentioned this already. Because if
we have not,
because
no.
if it was like he had like infinite power or whatever, then maybe it would be like a Daedalus thing of him being like inside of an automaton. That would be an interesting choice.
Oh, yes, he's going to put himself into a beep boop to defeat
then he
the
couldn't
robot.
die. By the way, I looked up Westport, Connecticut because I wasn't sure like how spot on I was about how rich they were. But yeah, according to the 2010 census, it's ranked 19th among America's 100 richest places. So that's about how bougie it is.
How you would think it's going to be?
Yeah.
So what you're telling me, B, is that we should go there and do a live show there?
Yeah, well, we could probably rent out a gazebo for $1 million.
Yeah, for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, can you hurry up? There's like David Sedaris is doing a book signing here in 5 minutes.
David said, well, it's that, and then afterwards is going to be like a copy of The Secret will be playing in the gazebo.
Yeah, so this definitely makes sense as like a setting for where Luke lives because he comes across as like an entitled, waspy, white guy who wears boat pants. That's just, I don't know.
Man, you really don't like Luke in any way, shape, or form.
I don't like him, but also, like, he's from Westport, and he acts the way he acts. I've met this guy before. I've seen him with my own eyes. He wears that Nantucket red. Yeah, I know.
See, I have no concept of this. Well, I have no concept of this because in California, we have people that are like, YOLO swags YOLO. We have people like snapbacks.
Oh no, we have that too, but that's not the Connecticut vibe. That's a different. Yeah, I feel like if this was written like this year, he would be the kind of guy who would say, "Ain't no laws when you're drinking claws."
Drinking claws, yeah.
That's what Luke would be. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that paint a picture for you?
Well, no, I love it. It's like, hey, yo, dog, you got no laws when you're drinking claws. Let's go do some.
And
vapes.
then he like crushes a can on his head. Yeah, he's not cool.
Well, no, he's also like, hey, Annabeth, hey.
Yeah, actually, knowing that he's from Westport just completely contextualizes the kind of person that I see Luke as.
So this chapter kind of ends with pretty much they're going to be driving down the road. They're going to have to get to Connecticut as quickly as possible because once again, we have more of a deadline now, which I like that again. We have a time conflict. We're getting back into the Percy Jackson norm of we have the time conflict. We have this new plan. It's interesting that we don't have a quest. Like Percy Jackson has to go on this quest to do this thing, but I guess Nico's providing the quest finally, and we don't have a real prophecy other than the gigantic great prophecy.
Yeah, the big prophecy that, I mean, predicts that maybe Percy's gonna die or cause something horrible to happen.
Who knows? Maybe Percy Jackson might just become the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm probably not the Grim Reaper, but I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't think he's gonna go into an automaton, but that's about the only thing I can think of as far as, like, someone living forever. in this universe.
So, B, what is the name of the next chapter?
So the name of the next chapter is Chapter 6, My Cookies Get Scorched. Oh no.
Oh no, my cookies!
Does that mean... Oh, well, I guess they go to the underworld. Because, yeah, so we find out that you can travel through shadows if you have a hellhound. That's, like, kind of how...
You mean a heckhound?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's how Nico had been traveling before, where you can, like, leap from... Like, all shadows are, like, a part of one connected shadow space, sort of, is, like, how...
Oh, so
it
you go
works.
to the Shadow Realm?
Yeah, basically, it is. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh!
Ah, yes.
So I guess they use
Long
that to
ago,
go
when
to
the pyramids
underworld?
were so
I don't know
young.
why they would. No, but they go to Connecticut, so my cookies get scorched. So I guess I don't know. The hellhound thing plus the fire imagery
Well,
made me
they're
think of
going
the
to be
underworld.
saying
But
Luke's mom.
yeah, so they're going to Connecticut, but I'm not sure what the cookies have to do with anything. Is Luke's mom making cookies? I feel like Luke's mom probably has a maid who doesn't. She doesn't make her own cookies.
Do you have a feeling that's like they get into the house and they start breaking everything up and she's just like, my cookies! Don't you want grandma's cookies?
Yeah, I don't know.
Was it going to be like they like go into her house and start busting up the place and they realize that she's like a really nice person?
She's making cookies. It's like Grandma's Kisses from
SpongeBob?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's going to be like.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea why cookies are involved. I guess they're gonna like show up at his house and like see what his life was like. It's gonna be very funny if it's just like very sweet, and then they're like, "Oh, so he's just a jerk."
And she's like, what?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what this is. I feel like his mom is gonna have big Martha Stewart energy, like kind of nice, kind of scary. That's my guess.
Now, B, what are your projections about like why Luke became the person he is, but also who his mom is? Because it takes a lot of effort to abandon your mom,
It does.
especially at like 9 years old.
Yeah, I feel like it could really go either way. Because I think plot-wise, it would be both interesting if his mom was really horrible and he had a reason to leave, but it also might be interesting if she kind of was just like a nice person and he was just like a petulant teen who didn't like feel understood by her, or maybe like held her to a high standard. I get like big Gilmore Girls vibes a little bit. Remember, like this is like from a rich kind of fancy place. Like maybe she had all sorts of expectations for him that he didn't want to fulfill, but then also his godly parent has expectations for him because he has to go on these quests. So I think there's like some weird like parental issues either way. I don't know if she necessarily is going to be evil or if she just like didn't understand him or like provide for him in a way that he needed when he was like an angsty demigod dealing with the fact that he had to like take on the world at a young age. I don't know.
Oh man, this is where like Nirvana comes into place, some Rage Against the Machine, maybe some Dashboard Confessional.
I feel like that's like too deep for Luke. Even
that's too deep.
Yeah, no, he's probably. I mean, the deepest he'd probably listen to like Linkin Park, maybe.
Oh no, B, he's listening to Billie Eilish.
I feel like that's mean to Billie Eilish, I think. Like, literally, I don't even know what. He probably listens to, like, Asher Roth or something.
Oh, man.
Just the song I Love College over and over again. I'm just really painting a picture of the mid-2000s here.
Oh, man. I'm trying to do, like, modern day now, but you're right. Maybe, like, Incubus?
Maybe, yeah. That's about it. I could picture that.
Or Rise Against. Rise Against seems like something like tearing down the system.
Yeah, but he doesn't understand that it's supposed to be like incarceration and not like your mom who makes you clean your room. That's like not what the machine is.
Yeah, maybe B. Who knows?
I wonder if I'm going to be spot on because these are just like all my stereotype ideas of like dude bros who are from Connecticut. But like, who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong.
What would happen if you were wrong?
I mean, I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but like that's the vibe I'm getting from just like the assumptions I would make from like where he's from and the kind of person he is. Because we already kind of know why he is the way he is, even regardless of his mom. Like all the stuff with Hermes and everything, and like being expected to fulfill the certain demigod role, and then having a scar across his face. That could have been enough to make him the jerk that he is.
Yes, and this is going to be really interesting next week. I'm excited to read the next chapter.
Yeah,
I'm sure everyone's
we'll see.
excited. So B, do you want to read some emails this week?
Okay, so we got a few emails this week. The first one is from Sophia, who says, Dear Zach and B, my name is Sophia, and I am 16 years old from the long-forgotten state of Nebraska, in a little town right outside Omaha. My godly parent is Athena, but I really like Artemis because of her no-nonsense attitude. Nice. In one of your episodes for Battle of the Labyrinth, you said that the Midwest was the boring part of the U.S., but I'm here to counteract that assumption. Here in Nebraska, we have Carhenge, the world's biggest and best zoo. We have the safest military base in the U.S. Anyway, after that little tangent, I love your show so much, especially with the stories you guys tell about the books you've read. And the only thing that is hard is hearing Zach's puberty voice. Oh, yeah, the teenage voice you do.
Okay. In my defense, people have told me to tone it down. And you know what? I think I might because I feel like I get the Melissa McCarthy voice of going it on,
Yeah.
or I'm trying to do like the squeaky voice teen from The Simpsons.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. I get the vibe. I mean, that might very well be what Percy sounds like. We don't know. It might be canon.
I can see why it gets a little grating because also when I do it, I'm like practically yelling into the microphone.
Yeah, no, it sounds very painful for your voice. I have a few questions for you. Like, for Zach, what book is your favorite out of Heroes of Olympus? Just a number so you don't spoil it.
Oh, that one, that's easy. That's book number 4 or number 2.
Okay. I have no idea what that means. Do you ship Talia and Nico? Oh, that's an interesting ship. I have no idea. I don't even know if I remember them ever interacting, so I have no opinions of that.
I have no opinions about it either.
I don't, but I know that a lot of people do. I'm actually writing this on Thanksgiving, listening to I Meet Some Fishy Relatives. Your podcast is so funny. When I'm listening in class, I have to try and stop myself from laughing. A lot of people listen in class. Like, is it okay that you're listening in class?
There's like SSR and there's times where like you don't have to do stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe they're listening to it between classes.
I hope it's that. Anyway.
Well, I used to listen to podcasts between periods.
At least you're learning about books. It's probably better than when I was just like listening to music.
I mean, I can only imagine like the podcast people listening to now, like they have their headphones in and they're listening to like a murder podcast, or they're listening to like Mabim Bam, or they're listening to like, actually, when I was younger between periods, I would listen to Welcome to Night Vale. That's what I would do.
Yeah, Welcome to Night Vale wasn't even a thing when I was in high school.
It was for me. It was because it was right before I left high school.
Yeah, you just barely got, yeah. Your podcast is so funny. When I'm listening in class, I have to try to stop myself from laughing. Last question. What is your favorite show? Mine is Supernatural. Anyway, well, I said Supernatural like a baby. Supernatural, not supernatural.
Well, I'm keeping the first one.
Anyway, I'm Sophia, and you're watching Disney Channel up next, horsing around. Oh, that's a good way to sign off.
Wait, so when you do like the Mickey ears, do you do that or do you make it into a horse?
Yeah, you try and kind of do a loose approximation of a horse. Have you ever seen those memes where they like draw, they just like show what the shape of the Mickey Mouse head would actually be, and it like looks really dumb?
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Anyway, what is my favorite show? I have a lot of favorite shows. Right now it's Anne with an E, which is kind of sad because they just canceled it, so this is the last season. Wompty womp womp. What else? I mean, that one's good. Good Place is really good.
I'm surprised. I thought your first answer was going to be Gilmore Girls.
I mean, I like Gilmore Girls. It's not my favorite show. I find it comforting, but it's sometimes really bad writing. And speaking of Luke, there's a character that reminds me a lot of Luke.
Is it called Luke?
Who's like, wait, is his name? No, there is a Luke in Gilmore Girls, but he doesn't remind me of Luke. There's a character in Gilmore Girls named Logan who reminds me of Luke. And he also is an entitled jerk from Connecticut with blonde hair.
I'm seeing a trend here. Maybe there might be a bias.
Yeah. It's a bad like they're bad people. I don't know what to tell you.
For me, man, I watch a lot of TV now, but maybe I'm actually really, really enjoying The Mandalorian. I have not had so much fun watching a Star Wars property since the New Deal.
Yeah, I heard people really like that. Would I have any idea what's going on if I don't really know Star Wars at all?
Yeah, you can watch it totally. It's so easy to watch.
I might do that.
You should watch it. It's so much fun.
Baby Yoda, I can't decide if I think Baby Yoda's cute. I'm kind of torn.
This last episode was so much fun. You can watch them almost like a silent movie. It's the way I gush about it. Like, it's funny like how I don't like all the new Disney movies for Star Wars, but this is the first property that has like a vision to it. I guess I'm trying to like articulate like a lot of them are really hard to watch as you can see like them rewriting things and making things for certain demographics, whereas the show is like a straight up story and it's a lot of fun. It actually can get emotional, which I really enjoy. For me, other shows that I like, man, I love The Office. You don't understand how much I love The Office.
Yeah, I don't know if The Office needs any more PR. You know what I mean? Like, when people say their favorite show is The Office, it's like, yeah, but like everyone's favorite show is The Office. So it's like...
Well, no, because when I was sitting in the car with Sam, it's all we talked about was The Office.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. Well, because you both love The Office. But also, like, Everyone loves The Office. It's kind of like when you're on like online dating and someone says they love The Office. It's like, yes, but that's sort of like saying you love breathing air.
Well, no, it's like every.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
no, but it's like how like when you look at like an emo person on like a dating app, their favorite movie is always Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Listen, that's one of my favorites. That's a good movie.
Well, were you an emo kid growing up?
Kind of, yeah.
And I rest my case.
It's true. You're right. It's a good movie, though. It's one of Jim Carrey's better movies.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other TV shows that I used to be a really, really big Doctor Who fan. Now I've kind of switched over to like classic Doctor Who, and I realize why that show's so much better than the new one. But that's because I like writing.
I have no opinion. I have seen like none of it.
It's good. Everything, even the new season was pretty good, but there's something different about it. But if I keep talking about this, I will go on and on and on about Doctor Who and how much fun it is. B, you ready for the next email?
I guess so.
So we got this email from Flora. Hi, I've been listening to your show for a while now. I love the Percy Jackson series, and you guys are butchering it. 1, you guys ramble on stuff that is not Percy Jackson. It's not Star Wars, the series of unfortunate events, or anything other than Percy Jackson. If you want to talk about other stuff, make a podcast called Zach and Beast Talks Random Blank. 2, it was very rude to say don't send us long emails. It's like saying don't send us emails at all because we don't like reading them. How rude. 3, stop hating on Annabeth. I don't understand why you hate her so much. It's not her fault, it's Rick's. Get off your high horse and like the book. If you don't like it, it seems that you do all the criticisms, then stop, read, and go back to reading a series of unfortunate events. Wow. Oh.
This is probably one of the harshest emails we've gotten. How am I going to say this? Do you want to start this off, or what do you... I don't know how to respond to this, really.
So this is what I'm going to say. And I'm going to say this with as much respect as possible, and that is, we respect your email. We respect what you say about this. But the problem, though, is that the way you approach this is not the best, because I understand...
It's not nice.
Oh, no, it's not nice. It's okay to have constructive emails. But what I'm trying to say here is that the way we do our show is that I've read them, B has not. I can't really talk about Percy Jackson in a much more full, detailed way because I don't want to spoil
Without spoiling
B.
it.
And I understand that, there are a lot of people that might find this frustrating, especially like butchering things. I'm a dyslexic. I get things wrong. I have a speech impediment. Of course, I can't say things correctly. You would be amazed how many takes I have to take to do stuff because I feel bad because I'm butchering things worse than you think. And
Or I might not know like a reference that you say. I mean, like, obviously we're not going to be perfect.
no.
But the thing is, there are other Percy Jackson podcasts that are also good and do different approaches to it. Our approach is to connect to other media, is to talk about random stuff, make jokes about horsing around. I mean, we're not going to make another podcast and call it Zach and B's Random Crap or whatever you suggested. We're going to make the podcast that's about Percy Jackson that connects to other things. That's the premise of this show. That's like what we wanted to do. We're not going to just do a show that fulfills what other people want out of it. This is for the sake of what we want to talk about it. What we want to talk about Percy Jackson, connecting it to other media. I mean, I don't think that it's fair to say that we don't like the books because we criticize them. I don't think it's even fair to say that it's not Annabeth's fault for being like an unreasonable character. It's Rick's. I mean, Annabeth isn't a real person. She's a character. Therefore, anything that Rick writes is a part of her character and who she is. Like, there isn't... What exists of Annabeth is canon, so you can't say it's Rick's fault for making her bad. Like, she is what Rick is. She is what Rick says she is. You know what I mean?
Yes, and to go on about all the random tangents that we make, the reason why we do such a thing is because when it comes to our show, even in Percy Jackson... It's the hero myth. It's the monomyth. It's easier to explain other things than explaining like the Greek myths. You can explain things like Star Wars. Star Wars, pretty much George Lucas just took Joseph Campbell's A Hero of a Thousand Faces and just went buck wild. We extrapolate. Yes, we use a lot of Harry Potter stuff, but then again, J.K. Rowling, guess what her major was talking about, mythology. So she would bring that into there.
I mean, or even unfortunate events, which obviously I have another podcast about that. So, I mean, you want me to go back to series of unfortunate events? I did a whole show about that. I've talked about that before. But there's a reason I mention it. It's because that's a series I grew up with, and I connect it to this other children's book series written around the same time. It's kind of similar in that it was sort of like within the Harry Potter zeitgeist of like those were sort of like tertiary books that like weren't as popular as Harry Potter, but sort of picked up some of like the same tropes and writing techniques and like children's lit style that Harry Potter used sometimes. Like there's a reason that we contextualize these books within other series, within other pieces of media. We're not randomly talking about these things just because we feel like it. I do think that it does add, I don't know, some context to like what we're discussing.
And I'll admit that we do go on tangents, and that's something that does happen a lot in our show. But the reason why is because we don't talk to each other at all during the week. People think we talk like almost every day. We usually talk for about maybe an hour and a half, maybe hour and 40, and then we go back to our week. It's not like if we're having random tangents, it's because we like what we do, and we're not going to change the show that way. Trust me, there were plenty of tangents that we cut out of the show. I'm the one that actually edits the show.
Oh my God.
Okay.
If you only knew what we actually talk about. Yeah, I think, the style of this show is supposed to be a conversation between friends about these books that happens to include other things that it reminds us of or whatever. We're not just trying to regurgitate what happens in the plot. You can reread the books if you want that, or if you want a different take on the books, or maybe a perspective of people who have already read them and have like sort of a more wider context of what it means if they already know how the books end or already know how the other series in the same universe end. But that's like not the show that we're doing. So if you don't like it, then that's kind of like, I'm sorry, but I don't think we're going to just change it based on like what you think about it. We're not trying to be rude really when we say this, because it's not like we don't take people's criticisms into consideration, but we can't change the show every time someone has a criticism, because everyone has their own idea of how a podcast should be made. So we can only make it the way that we want to. And if you want to listen to something else or make your own Percy Jackson podcast, that's cool.
There are other Percy Jackson podcasts. The great thing about capitalism is that, and especially podcasting, is there's choices.
There's very few great things about capitalism, but one is that there's other things. There's a market of choices, so you can go on iTunes.
I've listened to all of them because I like listening to other Percy Jackson podcasts just to see what they do and how they change differently. There's so many great ones out there. There's Floor 600, there's Demipod, there's the Half-Blood Report, and they're all podcasts that you can listen to. When it comes to our show, if you don't like our show, you don't have to listen to it.
There's other options, yeah. Yeah, basically.
It's sad when people stop listening to our show in this way, like they have these griefs. But again, what there's not much that we can do about this, because when it comes to our show, we like what we do it in this way because for us, it's the most comfortable. Otherwise, we're looking at spoiler stuff. We're doing things that aren't in our mission statement. And
it's not in the premise of what we're doing. And like, I kind of understand that maybe you just don't like that, but like, we're really not trying to be rude or like upset people. Like, our criticisms of Annabeth aren't meant to like say, oh, we hate your favorite character. It's always, within a critical eye. Like, there's never anything that we do on the show that's meant to say, oh, we hate these books. I mean, I don't think that criticizing a book means you don't like it. I criticize Unfortunate Events all the time, and that's like the series that I grew up with when I was a kid, and I loved it, and I did another show about it and whatever. But I, of course, would criticize it. My best friend, Sarah, she loves Harry Potter. She would criticize Harry Potter all day long because she has her own gripes about it. Like, just because you love something doesn't necessarily mean you don't have problems with it, or you expect better from it, or you have specific problems with a character. Even like, just because you are bothered by the way a character's acting doesn't mean you hate that character. You can simultaneously appreciate something and understand that it has flaws. That's just kind of how our perspective is. I mean, I'm trying to like sort of break down like what you say in this message. In general, we're just not trying to be rude. We're not trying to hurt anyone's feelings or like say that Percy Jackson isn't good for whatever reason. We're also not trying to say that we don't want to listen to your criticism, because I understand you said the thing about we don't want long emails. That's like less.
When it comes to the specific, like the length of the emails, I'd like to address this, and that is we love reading long emails in the sense of like it being a paragraph to 3. When we're talking about super long emails, we're talking about the ones that are like 7 to 9 paragraphs long, like we have to like take multiple screenshots. Those people, we love those people. Those people are some of the best, but the problem, though, is, like, sometimes we get so many emails that we feel bad because we can't put as much energy into that other person's email that might have, like, just a question or something. Like, a lot of those gigantic emails that we get are explaining things or elaborating things more than, answering questions.
They're often really great. A lot of our very long emails that we get are like very interesting, and they kind of break down a lot of things that we wouldn't have thought about, but also we want to like have the space for other people's stuff to be responded to in a quick manner, because we don't want to be responding to emails that were sent like 3 weeks ago, and then people like are wondering what happened, and it's like we have to like allot for a certain amount of time. So it's really about that. We read everything that we get, though, even if we don't necessarily read it on air.
Well, and also, especially when it comes to this, is that both of us, we work pretty much like 9 to 5 jobs. For me, I'm pretty much have been working nonstop, and we have a very, very small window of time to actually record our show, unfortunately. And it's nothing that we can't, like, oh, why don't you guys reduce this and that? Well, the problem, though, is, like, I'm sometimes on the road, B's off doing B things. You have to,
which also have to do with books, but it's a different thing. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to, like, once we get bigger emails, it's not like we're trying to be rude about that. And, like, we don't have enough time. We're trying to cover the podcast as quickly as possible. Because for me, after this, I have to work for another 6 hours. This is my break time.
I mean, I guess my blanket response to this email would be, like, I'm sorry that you don't like our show, but I don't really know how we could change it in a way that would be fair. Because this is probably the only email that we've gotten that's so critical of the format that we have. Well, we've gotten plenty of other responses from people who love it and want it to stay the same, and that's also the format that we like. So I don't think it would make sense to every email that criticized a very specific part of what we do to change it just based on someone's suggestion. Especially, I mean, I would change our show if we were hurting someone, if we had said something that was offensive or unfair to someone, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I obviously would reconsider something like that. But as far as like format, that's just like a personal creative choice that we've made. And I don't think that that's really practical to change it at this point because some people don't like it. Maybe you just don't like our show, and we're sorry about that, but that's kind of like the way that it is.
I mean, there are so many podcasts that I listen to that after a while I don't like, and I just turn them off, and I sometimes find other things, and it kind of hurts sometimes, but then sometimes that's just the way life is. Like sometimes, like you love Coca-Cola, new Coke comes out, and you don't like the new formula, so you stop drinking Coke entirely. Like that's just the way of life is, and unfortunately, I apologized if this is how you feel. We can look this into consideration. We can make adjustments, but at the end of the day, most likely what's going to end up happening is that we're just going to default back to what we're comfortable with. And that's the way we do our show. And I respect this email. I guess the best way to put it is if we didn't respect your email, we wouldn't have read it on air.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, you want to voice your criticisms and that this may not be the show for you, but I don't really know how to change it to make everyone happy, unfortunately.
And we want to thank you for sending this message, and we want to thank you for listening to our show, because without you and without the support, we can change things around. We do take these things into consideration. We did have a talk about this before the show started. Nothing like, oh, we were laughing at you or anything, but we looked at how can we change our format to help people, but also looking at past shows and understanding, okay, this is where things went wrong. These are where things went right. At the end of the day, the way our show is structured, the way that I edit our show, I feel comfortable the way it is because thousands upon thousands of tens of thousands of people listen to our show. And I think we make a lot of people happy no matter what we do. So unless we start talking about crazy batshit insane things like we hate Annabeth, which I don't hate Annabeth. I look up to Annabeth. She's one of my favorite characters. I think it's different because looking at this as an adult really opens my eyes up to see certain stories, certain media for kids, and realize, oh my God, I used to be like that. And I can understand why I loved Annabeth as a kid. And even now, when we're talking about Annabeth, we're talking about a specific personality thing, which is when she's boy crazy, she is the absolute worst. And that's kind of a hard thing because for me, Annabeth in The Lightning Thief is one of the most well-constructed characters ever to grace the page. And I will say that with Venom. She is so good. Even in The Lightning Thief, she is the best part of that show. And there's some great moments and there's great tender moments. Even up to Titan's Curse, she's great. But then all of a sudden you have to infuse that, the teen drama and the romance. And it kind of hurts her in that way. And it's really sad to see that in that way because I know a lot of people love the romance. But that's kind of the hard thing is our balance. We're not going to not say good things about it because we don't want to offend anybody, because when it comes to our show, we want to look at it both. I'm looking at this from adult eyes as well as me reading this as a kid, but also the most important thing, though, is that we're looking at this as people that read books a lot. I read so many books. So we're trying to be critical of this book and why do we like this book? Why do we hate this book? Why do kids love this book? I think we've answered that question multiple times, and it's beautiful. And I think all I can say is just thank you so much for that lovely email.
Yeah. That's kind of what we had to say.
B, do you want to, what's next email?
We have a last email from this week is from Brian, who says, Zach and B, I've been listening to your podcast for about a week. I just finished the first book, reading a few chapters and then joining your discussion of them, and I'm loving this journey. I listen to a few Harry Potter read-along podcasts, but they finished with the books before I found them. Plus, I know Potter so well, I don't necessarily need to finish the chapter before I listen. With Percy Jackson and the spin-off series, I'm familiar with the stories, but if I tried listening without reading, I would be rather lost. I do look forward to catching up to your read. I also love the format with B being unfamiliar with the series, and Zach having read them before. Your different levels of knowledge make for a fascinating discussion. I do have a pair of questions before I go. What is your favorite character in the series? I'm very partial to Nico D'Angelo. Also, will your next series be Heroes of Olympus or Kane Chronicles? The Kane Chronicles is my favorite series that Rick Riordan has made. Thanks again, and keep up the great work, Brian.
I think I can answer our question, and that is we're both Team Dare. Go Team Dare.
Yeah, Rachel Elizabeth Dare. Yeah, we talked about that. I feel like we might have to do a moratorium on favorite character question, because I think we've answered it enough times that you could probably find it in most of our episodes. But I mean, I guess it always changes, so maybe it's good to update every once in a while. But yeah, we're a fan of Rachel right now, I guess.
Go Team Dare.
Team Rachel.
What?
Yeah, I like Rachel a lot. I don't know. There's a lot of good characters that are kind of fascinating. I find Tyson pretty interesting. I mean, it depends, because there's like in the book that more focuses on Tyson. That's kind of like in Sea of Monsters. It's more interesting to focus on Tyson. Well, sometimes Talia, I find her the most interesting character. It kind of just really depends on what story we're reading. But yeah, Rachel, I guess for now.
For me, I love Rachel. I love Thalia, and guess what? I love Annabeth Chase. Those are some of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I mean, Annabeth's a great character, too. She does things that bother me, but I still like her as a character. That's the thing. It's very funny to get an email after the other one, where it's sort of like someone saying that they really like our format. So it goes to show that everyone's opinion is different. You know, in this email, they also say that Brian really likes the Kane Chronicles. Well, we've gotten tons of people saying they really want us to read Heroes of Olympus, so it's kind of, it's really hard to I
think we're going to have to leave it up
everyone.
To a vote, I feel like.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do a vote on Twitter. I think it's probably going to be Heroes of Olympus, just based on anecdotal evidence of mostly getting emails from people asking for Heroes of Olympus, but Kane Chronicles might come after that, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what chronological order we're going to go in, but we'll see.
And it's going to be interesting for me because both of those series I haven't really read as much as I've read Percy Jackson, so our format's going to change a little bit too.
Where we're both going to kind of be dumb.
Yeah, and it's going to be more interesting to read it and talk about it in that way. So who knows? The sky's the limit. Well, I know we didn't get any Apple Podcasts, but I think because this episode was recorded on Thanksgiving and people listened to this Thanksgiving, it was a while ago. Why don't we talk about what we were thankful for this year?
Oh, what we're thankful for. Oh, that's kind of sweet. Well, I'm thankful for a lot of things. I'm thankful for the show, for all of the cool people who listen to the show and send nice input and, tell us what they think about what we're discussing. I'm grateful for books and for food and for my house and my family and friends like you.
Aw, thank you. Well, this is awkward then. Well, I'm thankful for my Ferrari, my dog, my pet dinosaur. No. Okay, so what I'm really thankful for this year is the amount of friends that I have and just how much of wonderful support that I've had this entire crazy year. It has not been the easiest year for me. And I think the support that I've had with a lot of my friends and a lot of close people in my life has meant so much to me. Obviously, I have to be thankful for my dog, Rosie, because Rosie's the best.
She's an angel baby.
But all dogs are all... Oh, yeah, she's an angel baby. She was a pillow pet we wished on, and they just sprung to life. And we're like, oh, my God, what's that?
Yeah, it was a miracle.
It was a Christmas miracle, even though we're Jewish.
The blue fairy granted her a wish.
Oh, God, that reminds me. I watched the movie Teacher's Pet. What a terrible movie that was.
It's not the
It's
greatest.
unwatchable.
The animation is like, it's sort of like retro-y, but like more cursed. Do you know that's the same guy who did the drawings for that game Cranium?
Yeah, I was about to say that. Isn't this just Cranium?
Yeah, it's Cranium. It's the same guy.
It's ugly. But I'm thankful for a lot of things. I'm thankful
You're not
for
thankful for that.
not thankful for that show. But I'm thankful for just being nerdy. I feel like that's the best thing is like we live in a world now where I got to go to that Half-Blood camp, and there'll be an episode coming about that soon. And it's weird being an adult watching these kids have fun because I'm envious of like I really wish I had this much fun as a kid. Like they were so hyped to play Dungeons and Dragons that I almost like I cried a little bit inside because never in a million years have I would believe that a bunch of girls and boys would want to play Dungeons and Dragons together and not feel weird playing it. Because when I played it, people used to make fun of me. People used to beat me up. So for me, this is groundbreaking in just how crazy we can all come together as a people. And I think that's the most important thing is that, you know, this year, a lot of years past, you know, a lot of people feel like we've been divided, but I feel like a lot of things have strengthened a lot of people's relationships, a lot of understanding. So I'm thankful for everybody in that sense. I think everyone should be thankful for a lot of things. But for me, I think fellowship of man, fellowship of humans is one of the most big things I'm thankful for this year. Man, I'm sounding kind of preachy now. Woo-wee. B, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphafblood@gmail.com. We have a Twitter at halfblood_radio. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/radiocamphafblood. We have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so just go to www.teepublic.com. Well, guys, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal. See ya.
Bye, guys.